Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. This is Muslim Guy here. I'm back in a mood. I like doing the political tests, and there's this old one that I found again, political simulator. It lets you create your own little country or your own little thing, all the way down to like the individual, the egoist anarchism, and free association. It's kind of funny. Creates a little heart, kind of cute. You can do a city state, a country, or Earth. It's very generalized for things like the economy. You got your education, media, finance, healthcare, retail, manufacturing, construction, agricultural, natural resources, and real estate. In the real world, these are really, 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 really subdivided. Like for instance, agricultural alone, off the top of my head, has like five different things. You have manufacturing, agricultural slash manufacturing. You have food products like food crops. Then you have cash crops. You have livestock. You have aquaculture. Like, in real life, when you're doing research for this, you got a lot of different variation. But this is just in general. And honestly, when you're trying to talk about your political views, it lets you it lets you really get in there and kind of show people what you're actually talking about in a general sense. Because it doesn't have every single law you can break, but it's got a lot of not issues, but a lot of talking points right here that you can strike up a conversation with. I like using it. It's actually quite fun. And then you got your political web instead of a political compass. You get your authoritarianism, your liberalism, your nativist, your cosmopolitan, your traditionalist, your modernist. Each one is the exact opposite. Your left and right, your high spending versus low spending, nationalization versus privatization, regulation versus deregulation, and statism versus minarchism. I mean, if people don't know what all this stuff is just like by context clues, just drop a comment. I'm not trying to sound like a prick. I'll explain it. I mean, I'm not that well educated, but at the minimum, I can just drop you a link to it. Um, the political simulator overall pretty much drops you into a established simulated nation that is a, a Western style state after 1945. Kind of like a liberal democracy, maybe a traditional republic, but it's pretty much the status quo for the Western world, and it lets you. I mean, you can make all kind of changes. And today, that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to kind of show what I believe the ideal nation should somewhat look like. I mean, again, you get to be very specific on some things, but some things you really can't be specific on. So it's kind of like an oxymoron. It's generally specific. So there's also tooltips that explains exactly what they're talking about, and some stuff I'm gonna go over. Actually, the functions of the central bank, uh, discount window, quantitative easing, and currency intervention. I'm not gonna go over them very much. I'm just gonna tell you the basics of what they are, and then I'm gonna drop all the sources for my information so you can read it if you feel like it. Me personally, I think I think we'll start with central banking because that go ahead and get that out of the way. I think it should be publicly owned. I don't think it should be private. That is the treasury. Publicly owned in this political simulator essentially means owned by the government. It's a nationalized business. I think the central bank should always be a publicly owned thing. It should not be a private thing. Also, in your economic sectors, you have their percentage of the GDP. You can also change that to in billions of dollars. There's a multiplier. This really does nothing but let you like adjust if you want to get really specific. Like it basically, instead of a GDP multiplier, it's a population multiplier. You know, if you have a higher population, you typically have a higher GDP. So, and America's current GDP is like 26,000. So that's why I have it maxed up. So, because I kind of want to simulate a large nation like America, kind of how I want to see America go. Okay, I'm going to leave this up. You can pause it whenever there's a tooltip, so you can pause it and understand. And we'll talk. I'm only going to talk about my choices because I talk about every single thing on here. It will take forever. It's already going to take forever to do. But we're going to start with the central bank, and I'm going to say because I think a central bank should do all of this. So we're going to start with discount window because that's what I have open to share the information. The discount window is a central bank lending facility meant to help commercial banks manage short-term liquidity needs. Banks that are unable to borrow from other banks in the Fed funds market may borrow directly from the central bank discount window, paying the federal discount rate. Current discount rates are listed on the Federal Reserve website. These are some key takeaways from what a discount window is. The discount window is a central bank facility that offers commercial banks very short term loans, often, in most cases, just overnight loans. The Federal Reserve's extended discount window loans to financial institutions that in turn support commercial industries. It's mainly for corporate loans that are paid back really, really, really quickly. For like when they need a massive amount of money. I guess I'm assuming it would be to make payroll for like massive corporations. I'm assuming either that or pay their bills. The discount window rate is higher than the Fed funds target rate, which encourages banks to borrow and lend to each other and only turn to the central bank when necessary. And the discount window is also used for central banks when they act as lenders of last resort. Those last 2 points are basically saying that banks should loan each other money, and that if they can't, this is a last resort type of situation, meaning that they're gonna help you, but they're gonna charge you hella interest because you're kind of mismanaging your business. So that's pretty much all I'm gonna talk about discount window. I'm gonna leave this open because it is much more complicated than that. Much more. I just read off the key notes. And then we're gonna go into quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is a form of monetary policy in which a central bank like the US Federal Reserve purchases securities from the open market to reduce interest rates and increase the money supply. Quantitative easing creates new banking reserves, provided banks with more liquidity and encouraging lending investment in the United States. The Federal Reserve implements QE policies, which is quantitative easing policies. The bullet points about qualitative easing are: qualitative easing is a form of monetary policy used by central banks to increase the domestic money supply and spur economic activity. In quantitative easing, the central bank pushes government bonds and other financial instruments such as mortgage-backed securities. Quantitative easing is typically employed when interest rates are near zero and economic growth is stalled. In the United States, the Federal Reserve implements quantitative easing policies. A lot of this information is going to revolve around the US, but then again, most of the world's central banks are based off the US model. So, from my understanding, and I'm only going into this so that because like this is the most complicated thing we're pretty much going to talk about. So I want people to know somewhat of what it is. And currency intervention goes by another name when talked about professionally. Foreign exchange intervention definition, strategies, and goals. I'm not going to talk about all this again. I'm going to post this article where I'm getting my information and definitions. So if you want to, you can. What is foreign exchange intervention, which is currency interventionism? A foreign exchange intervention is a monetary policy tool that involves a central bank taking an active, practitionary role in influencing the monetary fund's transfer rate of the national currency, usually with its own reserves or its own authority to generate the currency. Central banks, especially those in developing countries, intervene in the foreign exchange market in order to build reserves for themselves or provide them to the country's banks. Their aim is often to stabilize the exchange rate. So you see why I have chose literally the only three options for the central bank. That's essentially the function of a national bank. Like smaller banks don't really do this. Like your local bank isn't going to do it. This is only for national banks. I believe they should be publicly owned because they are the state treasury, or they should be owned by the state treasury if you have like a treasury department. So, sorry, a bit tired. It's early in the morning. Key takeaways: foreign exchange intervention refers to efforts by central banks to stabilize the currency. These stabilizing efforts can come from both market or non market forces. Currency stabilization may require short term or long term interventions. Stabilization allows investors to be more comfortable with transactions using the currency in question. See, this is for when your money is on the. This is for when your currency is on the market and in foreign countries for the most part. Dealing with foreign trade from my limited experience. But I wanted to go ahead and hit the banking system because that was like 12 minutes of the video and it's probably going to be a 30-minute video. So, my long story short. All right. Now that that's over, I think that there should always be a cash reserve of 25%. Hold 25% of all currency to help fight inflation. What I'm going by. Again, you can pause it there and read the tooltip if you want. So let's get to the fun stuff. The actual forging of a government. We'll go from left to right, certain groups, and then we'll probably not do any spending or sectors until last, which includes welfare and military spending, but we'll talk about foreign policy and military service. So, essentially building the government right now. I think I'll leave executive elected, legislative elected. And here's the thing, I think even the judicial should be elected. The difference for me is I think only the military should be able to, well, the military and like lawyer and the legal system should be able to vote for the president, the executive office. Everyone should be able to vote for the legislative office, and really only the only the legislative and legal system should be able to vote for judicial officials. I think that that's a perfect checks and balance. Well, not perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. I'm kind of iffy on legislative, even though I say everyone. Because I kind of voting requirements. Here we're gonna get into that. I think there should be obviously be an age. I think that you should be. I don't want to use IQ, but I think you should be able to pass polling tests to show that you're intelligent enough to vote and understand the issues. And here's where I don't care about ethnicity. If you live in a country and you're a citizen, you should be able to vote. I know many people are. I know many people are going to be surprised by that for me. But if you pay taxes and you're a citizen, here's where I get iffy because I think I have the opinion that really landowners can only be allowed to vote, but that could also be a problem for people if you have economic instability. Because people who are wealthy tend to want to keep power. So I'm not going to choose landowner, but I think that landowners and military veterans should have a higher weight to their vote because they have given the most to the political system and sacrificed the most. And they actually have a dog in the fight. Obviously, state religion. I'm a Christian. I think there should be a state religion. I think that secularism is destroying our nation because it basically renders your religion irrelevant, right? And I see no difference between state atheism and secularism because if your religion is unpopular, it's not going to be protected. We see that with Christianity. Christianity is the only religion you can mock and you can really do anything to. Then you have cults, like certain episodes of South Park, that will sue you into oblivion. And I think just having a state religion with that allows freedom of religious expression, like don't punish you for not following that religion, I think that would be a better system. Here's regional autonomy. I don't like limited autonomy. I'm going to hold up the tooltip for people so they can understand what they mean. I do unequal autonomy because at the end of the day, I think the federal and state government should have liaisons in every courthouse in every town, or at the minimum in the county seat, which is basically the county capital, in their courthouse. So I think unequal autonomy. I think the county should answer to the state should answer to the federal government, and I think should run a lot smoother. And by answer to, I mean is superseded by, which a lot of people don't realize, but municipalities and counties, local elections and local politics and local autonomy affects you a lot more. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what they mean when they say autonomy, but that's what I'm going to go with by unequal autonomy. Because what I'm assuming autonomy in general, by the definition of the word, it means that you're allowing regions of your nation to function as individual nations, even if they're as small as a county. So I don't think that's popular. I don't think that is very intelligent. Sorry, I'm getting a little sick. Governing class. I think I want all of these groups. I wish I could choose all of these groups and only all of these groups. Because I think that labor reps not working together, but coming together and deciding laws to benefit both labor and corporations and businesses would work very well. And then when you throw in people who are scientists, engineers, and mathematicians, you have a highly intelligent perspective. And then obviously the military officials, you have your strategic wing and people who are going to be fighting for your nation. You have their opinion. And then obviously being a Christian, I think clerics and religious officials do have a place in government. So since I want everybody, and I can't really be specific with the type of government I want, we're going to leave government class to everyone. I am an environmentalist. I think that we should. I think we should take care of our environment. As a Christian, we're stewards of the earth, and I know I'm going to get a lot of controversy and hell for choosing climate change. I do believe in climate change, but I don't believe it as the progressive way. I understand that climates change over time. They sometimes alternate back and forth depending on what's going on with the planet and the position of the magnetic poles. Also, rivers change courses throughout history, which could have effects on the environment and climate. So that's why I choose climate change. I think that we should limit air pollution, land pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, and even light pollution, but light pollution is not on here. As far as women's rights, I want to leave this here. I really want to leave this here. I want to leave voting here, but I can't. I can't betray myself. The 19th Amendment was a mistake. Ask any woman what it is, and most of them won't know. I think everybody has the right to an education, either public or private, depending on what they can afford. People have to be able to work. People should be able to own property. It's kind of retarded to say women can't own property. Wage discrimination. If you do the same job, you should get paid the same work. Now that doesn't mean if you take maternity leave or you take time off because of your period or you're sick or or other reasons women typically take time off. That doesn't mean you still get paid for it because you work the job. If you're working those hours, you should get paid the same for those hours and your experience. Like your hourly wage plus whatever you agree on for your experience. Maternity leave. I actually think fathers and mothers both should get paid maternity leave because I am a natalist. I am a pro natalist. I believe that families are the single most important thing. That's the future of your country. It is just as important to have fathers in the home as in mothers when the baby is developing. But the men in a traditional society are the ones who go and work and they go die in war. So that's kind of why I took voting away. I know people go, it's LARPy, it's stupid, but I'm a traditionalist. I don't mean to be an asshole, ladies. So moving on. Uh, I don't really want to touch on inheritance tax because it's getting into taxation, and I don't want to do the budget later. We'll touch on minimum wage. I think that it should be corporate only. It should not affect small businesses. I don't think it should be fixed. I think it should be adjusted with inflation yearly. Or not well, yearly would be nice, but I think every 10 to 5 to 10 years. I think pensions should be matched at least by 50% per dollar. Like dollar for dollar is asking for a bit much. 25% to 50% per dollar put in by the employee should be matched by the employer, and that's regardless of public, private, or whatever. I don't think it should be fully employer funded because that's not right to dig into their profits if you're not going to take the responsibility to plan for your future. So I think them matching 25% to 50% of your every dollar that you put in there is fair. And those private companies who match dollar for dollar would probably get better employees because it's a benefit. And I'm going to touch on that right now, actually. None. None. None whatsoever. If they're, and this is very, and I'm going to go ahead and put rights for immigrants. I'm going to say like limited because I know even though we say none, there are special occasions, there are reasons. But as far as mass immigration, none. None whatsoever. And if you're a immigrant, until you earn your citizenship, you should have limited rights. You should not have every benefit that a citizen has. And that right there is the reason I support this because immigration, whether legal or illegal, damages your wages or lowers your wages, makes it to where employers and employees do not have to not beg, but do not have to have good working conditions and good benefits because they can just rotate people in and out easily, especially if there's an H-1B1 visa program. It's just terrible. So I'm just going to cut it from the BS, no mass immigration, nothing. I don't want asylum or refugees. There are special cases. We can talk about those on the stream or whatever, but just as far as mass immigration goes, none. None whatsoever. I guess I'm going to go ahead and touch on the military and do everything up here before we go down here. So, military funding, I am an expansionist. I'm not going to lie. I think America should annex Canada and Mexico. Not going to touch in on it. I think every American man at 18 should serve 2 years in the military. Does not have to do combat. I think combat should be a completely voluntary basis. But the military would go a huge way in expanding the education system. You would go elementary school, or most cases, um, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, then a military style education where you can learn basic skills, cooking, cleaning, carpent. No, not cooking, cleaning. That's basically shit. But secondary skills like carpentry, mechanics, welding, something that you can then start to work on getting licensed for a trade or something that you can do after you do your mandatory service. or that could be a gateway into college if you are poor, like it is now. Combat should be 100% volunteer unless times of emergencies where we're at war and we're losing a lot of people, and it's got to happen. Other than that, conscription for 2 years for every man. Go through basic, learn you a trade so you can benefit society. It's your time as service. I believe everybody owes a service to their nation, myself included. I think I'm getting sick. So let's see. Spending. I don't really like the way they do spending because they break it up between infrastructure and then welfare, and it's kind of shitty because this is pure government spending. This isn't taxation. This isn't imports. This is pure government spending, and uh, I'm just gonna put this way. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. But military spending, military funding, I think off the rip, because military spending accounts for not just buying guns and bullets and training of soldiers. In America, military spending is one of the leading causes of research and technological development. So, what isn't put down here into these things? Because the military does do a lot for the government. It's not just national defense. They do a lot of research and development. They do a lot of research and development into uh, renewable resources and if I forget the proper word. Renewable resources and alternative energies. They do help a lot with conservation. I don't know if they do much for public parks or waste disposal, but I know that they do a lot for government departments, like especially the National Guard. I know the National Guard is for states, but it's still part of the military. And then you have your welfare. I don't really like the way they they did this because for one, basic income, no, negative. That's a no no. Minimum income, that's also a negative, right? Because I there's nothing like food stamps or anything like that. So I'm gonna assume that's under poverty fund. So I'm gonna have that as about 10%. It's a bit difficult. I have unemployment at 20% and pension fund at about 30. Because like again, I do want some public I want some public pensions like social security. I also want the public to have 401ks and be matched with their employers. That actually might be a little bit too much. I'm going to knock that down to 10. I'm going to do 10 across the board because unemployment should be a safety net that people have access to, and it should be better than what it is now. But you don't want it to turn into something that people go, "Oh, well, if I do bad at my job, I'll just get unemployment when I get fired." You want people to work, but you don't want them to become reliant on the social safety net. Poverty fund, I'm going to assume that stuff like food stamps and financial aid for college. So I am actually going to bump that up to about 25 for those reasons because I see that as stuff like FEMA helping out after natural disasters, um, financial aid for college, helping people with medical problems. So that needs to be a little bit higher than the other two. So I think that's our government pretty much done. Yeah, I think I like what we got going on here. Let's see our our nation graphs for right now, and we have a positive GDP. Hell yeah, that's positive taxation. That's a surplus after, by the way, for those of you who didn't know. So obviously we went upstate and authoritarian, nativist, traditionalist. right wing. This is probably going to be higher than what you would like, but lower than you expect. Regulations, it's probably going to maintain where it's at. High spending, probably going to be 50% by the time we're done. State will probably be around where it's at now. And the cultural aspects of right wingism is definitely going to probably be a lot higher. Although I might surprise you. I think we got all this. I think we got the government done. We're going to move on to law enforcement. Murder, death penalty. Rape, death penalty. Child abuse. This is the thing. This is the thing, right? What do you define child abuse? If you whoop your kids, that's not child abuse. You beat your children and leave permanent damage, that's child abuse. But if you execute a parent or you give him life sentence, you take the parent away from that child, and it could have just been an accident. So, depending on the severity, I think I'm gonna go with the minimum punishment here. Fines. I'm gonna say fines. If you accidentally hurt your child, fines. If you hurt your child and it leaves a permanent damage to them, jail time. If you harm your child sexually, harm your child to the point they cannot function in society, and it's severe, death penalty all the way. But if you hurt your kid or you don't take care of your kid and it doesn't result in permanent injury, death, or mental harm, I'm going to say fines. Because there should be a punishment for abusing your children, you know? Like just being mean to them, which is it's in my opinion, very rare in society. But you shouldn't be a dick to your kids. I've met people that are, and it's very rare. You shouldn't be a dick to your kids. Be a dick to your kids, pay the toll. Rape. I know I say death penalty, and I mean death penalty. I do think death penalty for rape and molestation should be a thing, but I also want to make sure that it's not some chick being vindictive. If it's legit rape, death penalty. If it's some vindictive chick, I think she should have a life sentence for trying to ruin someone's life. Murder, as long as it's not self defense, death penalty. First degree murder, obviously. Manslaughter is an accidental death. I would just see jail time or a fine, depending on the level of your stupidity. If it was a pure accident, fine. Especially if it was because of your car being malfunctioning, you're not taking care of your shit. If it was just outright stupidity and negligence, jail time. Defamation, fines, depending on how bad you hurt someone's reputation and how much money you cost them. Incitement. See, this is where I lose a lot of people because I see incitement as freedom of speech, unless it results in death, property destruction, or like something bad happening. Unless there is a result to the incitement, right? So I'm gonna go minimum with fines. I think everybody can have a common ground there. But if there's like property destruction or death, if it's property destruction, jail time plus fine. If it leads to death, death penalty, because that would be murder. War crimes, I don't believe in them. I don't believe in war crimes. If you're a U.S. soldier and you're fighting overseas, there's no such thing as a war crime. Either all war is a crime or no war is a crime. That's just my stance. I don't believe in war crimes. Street prostitution. Her body, her choice. I know that sounds gay as fuck, but I think you should have a license and be required to get tested every week. If you want to sell your body, what it is. Same thing for brothels. If those people want to unionize and sell their body and do so in a safe environment, more power to them. Escorts, same thing, license required. Handgun. I want a background check and a training license for all firearms. I think that you should be able to buy any gun you want with any accessory. I think that the school system should have a mandatory psych evaluation. And this is obviously high school, or something in your civics class. Go over basic safety. You don't even have to. You don't even have to bring a gun into the school setting, right? But there needs to be some basic training before you are allowed to own a firearm. I don't think that there should be any lists of firearm owners. I think that the training license should basically be like a high school diploma or a DMV license, something in between. Like it's something that every citizen has that they have to show before they are given a gun by a business, like sold a gun, but it's not something that the government can use to say, oh, well, we want to go search your house or we want to do this and that. I know libertarians are freaking out right now, but there needs to be some basic education because I've seen idiots of all ages doing stupid shit with firearms just for the simple fact that they are not educated. Okay? Like, there's got to be something done. I also want background checks because I don't want mentally insane people who did get their basically gun diploma just by being a citizen and doing the training to be able to buy a firearm. If you are mentally incapable, the founding fathers themselves believed that you unfortunately lost your rights because you were not able to be competent. You were not able to understand things. So I feel like I'm in line with the founders on this one. Libertarians keep crying, I guess. Casino. I hate casinos myself. Would not be in one. License required, though. Online casino. This is where I believe you get into money laundering and like really bad vice and really bad addiction. But again, license required. Same for sports betting. Um, I'm not even going to touch on these, speak my opinion because I can't. Video will be taken down, but you obviously know what it is. I really want to, but yeah, this is what I believe. I can go into it on a stream or talk more about it somewhere else, but don't want to get too much into it. Abortion. This is where I'm going to catch a lot of flack. I do believe for mother's health, for rape, and birth defects. I could care less about socioeconomics. No, you shouldn't be able to murder your baby for socioeconomics and just because you want. These are legit reasons. They are the 0.1% or 0.01% of cases. If that is. Oh no, we have a glitch. Oh no. It doesn't like going away. Hold on. Oof. Yeah, well, it doesn't like me. It wants to say abortion rights, abortion rights, my body, my choice. But no, I don't. Here's the thing, like I want to force this because I believe it's good for the nation. But then again, there's a part of me as a Christian that's like that's not right. But you should allow people to have the right, or not the right, the ability to choose. That's what I don't like about the Republican anti-abortion shit. Um, I believe that life begins at conception, but I understand there's choices that have to be made for the benefit of society. Republicans are so anti-abortion they don't think that you should be able to abort your baby for birth defects. I'm against Republicans on that one. So I want to put it this, but I feel like that's going way too far. And you always have to give your citizens the choice for things. You can tell them no, but you also have to be able to explain why it's a no because they're citizens, not subjects. So I can't say forced as much as I want to, as much as in me I want to, but I can't do it. Nicotine, age restriction, license required to sell. Alcohol, age restriction, license required to sell. Cannabis, age restriction, license required to sell. age restriction lasts requires a sale for psychedelics, stimulants, and opioids. I know many people are going to disagree, but the war on drugs was a war against the people. People have their vices; they have to be able to choose. If they cannot function, that's what things like DFACs and rehabs were for. Are for. That's what mental health facilities are for. So, I mean, I think the age restriction on nicotine, alcohol, and cannabis should be 25. Psychedelics 20. I think actually across the board should be about 25, 21 to 25. Personally, eugenics or euthanasia. Uh, I I know what it's like to see people suffer. As much as I hate euthanasia, I feel like it should be a last effort. And honestly, if you're in chronic pain and there is no way to treat you, I think you should be able to end it. I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack for it. Now, it shouldn't be, oh, I'm sad or, oh, I'm a burden on the economy. Oh, euthanasia, that's your best option. No. But if you're in chronic pain or have a terminal illness, I mean, it's better than letting your family find you swinging from the rafters or somebody walking on your headless body in a 12 gauge, in my opinion. Obscenity. I mean, freedom of speech. I'm not a freedom of speech extremist, but well, obscenity is not just freedom of speech. Actually, I'm gonna go with fines because if you expose yourself to the public, depending on if it's an adult or a child it's jail time. If it's an adult, it's just a fine. Ethnic hate speech, unrestricted, that's freedom of speech. There's no such thing as hate speech. Corporate fraud. I want to say death penalty, but I think that's too extreme. But I think a life sentence would be good. Public embezzlement, life sentence. Blasphemy. Hey, I'm only doing this blasphemy because if you have a state religion, you gotta have blasphemy laws. And by the way, this just doesn't require to Christianity. Part of this dual system I want with a state religion, but also freedom of choice of your religion, is if you disrespect any religion, it's a fine across the board. That's disrespectful to its observance. It's rude. It's a shitty thing to do. It's one thing if you're debating theology and it gets heated. It's another thing if you're just being a fucking prick and you're making fun of people's faith. Treason, definitely. Dissent. I feel like dissent, depending on the severity, is free speech. If it leads to like spies being in your government, obviously death penalty because that's treason. But if you're disagree with your government, I mean, you should be able to speak your mind, man. If you're a citizen, you have the right to speak. So I'm gonna say that's what dissent is. Dissent against the state. Miscegenation. As somebody who used to be an ethno nationalist and understands race, it is hard for me to leave this as unrestricted because while I still do not support it, the only way you can stop it is by completely destroying the rights of your citizens. And it doesn't matter if you're black, you're white, you're Asian, or you're Hispanic. I'm pretty sure that we don't want to open that Pandora's box of allowing a very small minority of people to be like have their rights destroyed because eventually it will affect everyone. So, and there are genuine cases where people of different races love each other, and I don't want to stand in the way of anybody loving anybody. It's a shitty planet, man. If you find somebody that actually has your back and cares about you, you've lucked out. You've won the lottery. So it's hard for me to say unrestricted. Like, it's really hard. At maximum, I would go is fines, like an extra tax, essentially. I know that sounds shitty, but like that's as far as I'm willing to go. And since I really don't want to intrude into people's lives any more than necessary, I'm just gonna leave it unrestricted. I disagree with it. I don't like it. There's plenty of scientific reasons for not doing it, but I cannot justify anything more than a disconvenience tax to discourage it. So, I mean, I'm gonna leave it unrestricted. I think that pretty much covers our crime. Don't think I hit anything else. I don't think there's anything left. Oh, this is gonna be the tedious and boring part. Ooh. Ah. Well, okay, so let's do the public sector ownership. I think education should be about 60-40. I think most education should be state ran, or at least state subsidized. I don't think there should be any increase. I think the wages should be pretty much a little bit higher to encourage people to like do the job. Wage ratio in America is not like when it's a government job, it's not really a thing. But we're just gonna leave it at 100. That rate wage ratio basically means if you're on the bottom level, the person at the very top will make 100 times more than you. In the U.S., the average wage ratio is like 230. This is about the world average. It's about 100 times. So I'm gonna leave that where it's at. Public education, I think, is very important. It's a basic education for every person: reading, writing, math. I think we need that. I do think that teachers and religious institutions have a right to educate their own children. I think that parents have a right to teach privately teach their children at home, and even associations of parents have a right to do group teaching at home. I think for that reason that it should be so that private sector teaching should be subsidized for those reasons. I don't think that there should be any personal tax, but I do think there should be about a 20% corporate tax on most things in private sectors. Right? A consumption tax for education, huge import tariff for anybody wanting to just come to our country for because that takes up a spot from Americans, right? So yeah, huge import tax on people. Uh, so yeah, I think this pretty much covers my stance on the education sector. Media is basically communication technology and infrastructure, along with like mass media outlets. If this was literally just media, like CNN, Fox, I would have it about 90%. About 90%. Not gonna lie, but because it's infrastructure and cell phone companies and shit, I'm gonna lower it to 10. I think there should be public broadcasting and a government news station that is played all over the country. Not all the time. I think they should have their own channels. I think the public broadcasting should play documentaries and historical things and patriotic things. I think the news station should report on any wars we're in, any national news, and the economy. I don't want to increase prices. Don't want to increase wage. Not gonna increase anything. It's just more government jobs if people can't find jobs or if they're new to the media sector. Not gonna increase this. Not gonna subsidize any media outlets, but because it is infrastructure, because this also includes infrastructure, I'm gonna say 5% for building new cell towers and increasing internet speeds in rural areas. A corporate tax of about 25% on that. Personal tax, I'd say about 5 because this is like shit like cell phones and shit. So about 10% on that. A consumption tax of about 5. Import tariffs, as I want to stimulate the American economy, I want you to buy American products. 40%. Finance. I'm going to do about a 40-60 split here because I know most banks, I feel like most like city banks should be government ran, but I also understand that loan offices, loan offices, investment companies, and other things that are ran by the private sector are very important for stimulating the economy, very necessary for growth to even occur at all in an economy. But I want to eliminate as much usury as possible. Um, this is something that you're going to have to incentivize people to work for as a government. So it's going to be an 10% wage increase for people like above the private sector market, average. And prices, since it's going to be subsidized, it's going to be about, you're going to have subsidized loans and other shit. So I'm going to drop it down to 25. Private sector, I'm going to subsidize the financial sector, none. That's all private investment, nothing. Corporate tax, it's going to be high. It's going to be high because a lot of private financial organizations have a lot of political power, and this is a way to combat that. Everybody, including libertarians, hates taxes on private loans. Not going to be really high. It's going to be about 15%. Capital gains tax is going to be another 25. You're already wealthy. Shut up. Import tariffs 150%. I don't want foreigners being a. It's hard because I want foreigners to be able to invest into the United States, right? But I don't want them to be able to take money out. If you invest in the U.S., you know, it's you gotta come here. I know that's one of the special cases. If you're an investor, you may not be you don't get to be a citizen, but you can be a resident. You can be a non-permanent resident. Healthcare. This is kind of a difficult one because I want there to be a dual system, right? Private and public healthcare. Because I know that it's not fair to the taxpayer when healthcare is a large percentage of personal choice. And I don't want to have to tell citizens what they can and can't do. But also, part of the reason I eliminated immigration is you can't have public health care and any welfare system and public safety net with mass immigration. So I'm going to leave this at 30. I don't want to do 50-50. I think that most things that are done medically in the US are not really necessary beyond checkups, surgeries to fix things, and emergency. Like a lot of shit's plastic surgery, a lot of stuff isn't really necessary. It's more quality of life. And what I want to provide is basic healthcare, basic checkups, like getting rid of cancer, and not even necessarily getting rid of cancer, but fighting cancer, fighting AIDS, fighting other diseases, and improving people's quality of life. So obviously, this is going to be a 30% above market for people that are already like doctors. This would be a requirement for people who are coming into the medical field, right? But that would be to encourage people. There would be a price a price decup for poor people in the private sector. I would subsidize about 25% of things to be fair to the taxpayer who does choose to have private health care. Hospitals, hospitals, there would be a 5% sales tax on things. There would be a no consumption tax, and there would be a small tariff on coming to our country purely to have medical practices done. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's a little bit fair here. No consumption tax, just basically a sales tax on equipment, medicine, all that shit, and a generous subsidy for private healthcare institutions to invest into new ones and keep stuff going. All right, let's take a look since we did our law stuff. Oh no, we're in a deficit. Oh no, it's only 1% of our GDP though. Good. But here we're gonna see some other stuff. See, this is retail. This is buying and selling. Um, no public ownership of retail. None. None whatsoever. That is purely a service. That is purely for-profit businesses. No subsidies. Corporate tax will be lower than normal because that's a huge part of our economy. When you want to stimulate growth, you want to stimulate private business and corporate growth. To be 5%, there'd be like a 7% sales tax and a 3% consumption tax. There'd be no export tariffs. Hold on 1 second. Sorry about that, everybody. That was the homie Jay Rillo. But yeah, import tariffs. I don't really see import tariffs on retail, but I'm gonna say about 40%. No, I'm gonna say about 90 because I want you to buy American goods. Then we got manufacturing. See, I believe in the republic. The republic is supposed to manufacture a certain percentage of its needed goods. So, public ownership of factories for stuff for the military to ensure that we have what we need during emergencies, I'm going to say 10%. And because a lot of stuff may be sold to allies and other nations, I'm going to say a price increase of 10% only for when we sell to foreign nations. Wages to encourage people would be 3% more. Again, wealth ratio not really necessary. Here we go again. The only difference is there will be subsidies and a higher corporate tax. Not by much though. It'll only be about 10%. The personal tax will be more of 10%, and the consumption tax will be more of 5%. In my opinion, it should be that. Import tariffs again, like 90%. Export tariffs, none. Construction, I'm gonna view it like manufacturing. The government needs to be able to upkeep and construct certain shit for military bases, the highway system, uh, mega projects like underwater tunnels. So almost about 10% would be public ownership, and it's going to be the same as, pretty much the same uh, as manufacturing. So I'm thinking about what Jay Rillo and I are talking about. So this is going to be an hour long video. Wow. again, to encourage people to work here, about a 3% increase in pay. All right, private sector, again, about the same. If I'm going to be a little bit lower in corporate tax, do a little bit higher in personal tax. Consumption tax will be zero because you're just whenever you build shit, you expand on the economy, even if it's a house. So I want there to be as much economic growth, not trying to hurt the business, not trying to hurt business. And I kind of want other countries to want us to build their shit, to have our contractors go there. And I don't know why there's no export there. But again, import, I want you to 100% American companies. Like 100, if you want to build something, American company. Agriculture, look, the public sector part, same thing as for building military equipment. Military has to have, I would think the government should have a source of emergency food for natural disasters, um, for military production. Again, price going to be going to be about, yeah, 10% for when we have to, if we have to sell it to our allies. Wages, again, farming's hard work, so they're going to offer a little bit more money there. Private sector, subsidize huge farm. Corporate tax. Here's the thing for me, right? I feel in my heart that corporate tax should be high on corporate farms because I feel like if families retook the private farming business, it would be better for America. So I'm gonna have a high agriculture tax for corporations, and almost zero tax for personal. A almost zero tax for consumption. Import tariffs. America has the ability to grow all of its own food. There is no reason for us to import other food from other nations. So there we go. That's everything else. Oh no, no, I did natural resources. Oh, you've seen me blunder. Oh no. Oh no. Well, it's gonna be. I'm gonna be honest. It was gonna be the same either way, almost across the board for natural resources and agriculture. Both are very important. Both are very hard jobs. So, except for I feel like a little bit more on the natural resources should be for government consumption, specifically to sell to our allies. And I am going to lower the subsidy rate on the public sector to about 15%. Our private sector to 15%. Lower that back down to about. I'm gonna lower the corporate tax to 20 on agriculture as well. Again, again, I made a mistake. I was supposed to do this for. There we go. And this shit the same. Import and export on natural resources because America is a huge nation and it can produce most of its natural resource needs. What we don't have an abundance in, we can give special privileges and like low import, like very like almost no tariff to no tariff, depending on how bad we need them. Personal tax on natural resources is going to go a little bit higher. About 1.5 is what I wanted for that. Consumption tax would be about 1 personally. And that's on your shit like your kerosene and your coal. Again, same shit for this. So retail, I'm a bit real estate. I'm a bit I'm a bit iffy on. I want to do it like retail, but I also think the government should have public housing. So I'm gonna do about 5% like for the public housing needs for the extremely poor. I don't think the government should buy homes to sell. So let's just pretend the sales price doesn't exist. And let's say they get like a 25% subsidy on private sector. I think the homeowner should get a huge subsidy, especially depending on if they have kids. This subsidy on real estate. It does not apply to, in my mind, it does not apply to the realtor. It applies to the homeowner and business owner. If you have children or you're starting a business, the government should help you start that and fund it as much as possible. Especially if you have huge families and you have a farm or you have you live in a small town and you have a small business that are selling goods and services to your community. I mean, absolutely necessary. Land tax, land and property taxes for me would go away once you reach retirement, or depending on how many children you have. But property taxes themselves, like they go to funding your local schools and municipalities, so I would still keep them around, just not very high. I would do 10% on both. About a 20% rent tax and a 20. No, that's a sales tax on homes. So I do a 5% sales tax. So yeah, that's our very basic sectors done. So let's see where we're at. See, so this is we're in the deficit right here. Oh, so as you can see, there would be high spending, and well, it's a lot lower than I thought it would be. There would be high spending. There would not. I don't know where I set this. Oh, when I was fucking around with the military, I made that too high. But yeah, I want to subsidize these things, and as you talk about these issues and talk about these things, a government would be able to balance the budget, right? Yearly as they go. So I don't think having a deficit is necessarily bad because a government is not meant to produce a profit. It is meant to spend your tax money on for things to benefit the nation. So I mean, I can tweak it and have it break even. I've done it before when I've done it, and it was kind of funny and fun. But I'm gonna leave it where it's at because I mean, honestly, oh yeah, inheritance tax. Yeah, I think inheritance tax should be 75%. It's not a death tax. It's literally an inheritance tax. It is what it says. You see what it reads right there. Pause it and read this. The whole this is how the rich make generational wealth and keep power over you. Everyone hates this shit, even libertarians, but people bitch and say, "Oh, you got to pay taxes cuz you die." No, your kids have to pay taxes when you leave them lump sums of money, or they have to pay property taxes. Now, obviously, in an inheritance tax, if you inherit a house, in my world, you wouldn't pay 70% of that value. It would be you pay property and land tax on it, which would be 10%. So I like what we got going on here. Let's check the GDP on that. See that that knocked us down by I think 3%. So And I'm kind of upset because there is no income tax, and I would do a flat rate income tax of 20%. And I think that would make us break even. This has been Muslim Guy, and this is my ideal nation. Just letting you look at this: an imperialist nation state, a constitutional president republic, protectionist capitalism, and nativism. I wish it touched on unions and union rights. I wish it did because I think that it would be a lot more in detail, but it just doesn't do it. So, this has been Muslim Guy. This is pretty much the type of nation I want to live in, and as you can see, I'm pretty close to the center. For those of people who want to call me a socialist, socialism or communism is what you actually mean, is over here. I'm over here. I was gonna have a way higher high spending than what I had, to be honest. An authoritarian, nativist, traditionalist, gang gang. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Anything you want to talk about, leave in the comments. We'll catch up on it. This has been like an hour recording, and I did it in one take. So.